Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. This is an uncertified episode, which means we're on our other weekly cadence and we're talking about a new release. If this is your first episode and you just wanted to get our takes on Alien Romulus. A, smart cookie. I respect that about you. But B, you're listening to Certified Forgotten. We are a podcast that talks about horror films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. We have a tagline. I'm actually not going to use my tagline right now because I'm not super thrilled with Rotten Tomatoes. Well, whatever. It's fine. It's the industry that we work in. But usually we have an hour episode with a guest. Every other week we have a 30-minute episode with just Donato and myself. And that's what you're looking at today. We're going to talk about Alien Romulus. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I am excited because we've already talked about Romulus. I forget what episode it was. It was one of our guest episodes, and we were talking about Alien and where we all stood in our rankings and where these movies have kind of gravitated towards certain people based on the movie because they are so different in many ways. So I think today is going to be a really good conversation because we have you, the super Alien fan who is like
Correct.
collecting comics and like so into this, and me, the Alien appreciator. I've seen them all and I do like most of them to varying degrees, but I'm more of the Fede Alvarez lover. Like that's where I'm coming into this from. So I think we're going to have a balanced conversation of your takes as the franchise deep dive just obsessor, and then me being more of the I fucking love Fede Alvarez and I think he was the exact right choice for Romulus, and where did it kind of go wrong. Teasing
Okay.
how it's gonna go.
All right. Well, quick synopsis before we get started. If you haven't seen the film, if you've made some decisions based on what you've heard online, let's at least set the stage for the conversation we're about to have. Set between the events of Alien Covenant and Alien Romulus, set between the events of Alien and Aliens, got there on the second try. Alien Romulus follows a group of young colonists who decide to steal their future from Weyland Yutani. Rain and Andy, her android sibling, are recruited by their friends to break into a dead space station and steal the resources they need to travel to a nearby system. But when the station powers back up, the group soon learns that there are more than just corpses on board. Director and co-writer Fede Alvarez, Donato's boy, takes Alien Romulus in a direction that attempts to make it the latest reboot for a new generation of Alien fans. That's your sales pitch. I want to start by saying you're absolutely correct. I am sort of not a franchise guy. Like I feel like I'm not an IP guy. I think you know that about me. There's not a lot of things that I get particularly excited about. And I'm categorically on record as saying that I think canon is bullshit. Didn't used to believe that. Thank you, Disney and Marvel. You've really, poisoned the well in terms of like everything has to be interconnected. I'm in my summer of non-canon, which just means I want movies that don't try and tie things together. I want stuff that is basically like a Prey, right? Like, hey, we gave a universe or an IP to a director, and they did this like really cool fucking thing that was just for themselves. And maybe it connects, maybe it doesn't. That's not really the point. We're leaning into the director's strengths. That's what I love about the Alien universe is that no two Alien movies, with the exception maybe of Prometheus and Alien Covenant, are particularly alike because everyone is a different director doing them at their most. It is the most Jean-Pierre Jeunet. It is the most Ridley Scott. It is the most James Cameron, right? It is them living their best life on somebody else's dime. And that creates a franchise that has some real ups and downs and also has very, very little like core continuity in the whole thing. It's just all kind of a mess. I have a bunch of the books, I have a bunch of the comic books, but I like the do your own thing attitude. And whatever else you may think, positive or negative, about Alien Romulus is not a do your own thing kind of movie.
It is not, and that's why it is a movie that I like to a degree, but is still disappointing. That was the hardest thing I had to come to terms with walking out of Alien Romulus, because there are elements that do stick with me and I still do think about, and we'll get into those deeper. But on the whole, it's still somewhat overwhelming because to me, the potential of putting Fede Alvarez in this situation to make an Alien movie that is between Alien and Aliens, so we're getting more back to the template of a horror Alien, let's say,
Right.
and you're giving it to Alvarez, who's already proved with the Evil Dead franchise that he can go into an intellectual property that is long-standing and has a fan base that is ravenous for more, and he can still be himself, because that's what I love so dearly about his Evil Dead. It is aggressively Fede's movie the whole way through. And it's aggressively his voice, it's aggressively his super dark, like merciless tone. And that's what I wanted from his Romulus in a way. Like, my disappointment is not based on solely what we didn't get, because that's not proper for critique. Like, you still have to critique the movie that you were given. But knowing why Fede was the right choice for this, and then seeing how much Alien Romulus had to fit into the entire franchise, that's what bummed me out. What bummed me out most about this movie, and where all my low down points were, every single time that this movie had to connect back to something. Every time it couldn't just stick between, like you said before, Prey, great example. There are the
Right.
callbacks. There's absolutely the franchise tie in there. The nostalgia is it is palpable in the air. Like, we all know it's what's going on, but it's still its own movie, and it's aggressively its own movie, and that's why it rules. Romulus never feels like its own movie. Where I just said Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead always feels like his, Alien Romulus feels like he was just shoehorned in to make a franchise product, and almost to like tie everything together. He had to look at Prometheus and Covenant. He had to look at Resurrection and 3. He had to look at Alien and Aliens and somehow make them all make sense. And that is why the movie at the end, to me, does not make sense for a Fede Alvarez movie. I wanted him to go wild. I wanted him to get full creative rights. And it feels like every time he gets a little bit original, and every time he kind of gets into the mode that I wanted to be in for the whole almost 2 hour runtime, it feels like he's like a dog getting hit with a newspaper going, hey, what about the black goo? Or hey, what about this? Or hey, what about that? It always has to go back to something in the franchise. And that was frustrating for me.
I like on because I've seen it twice now. So on a rewatch, when I was sort of in the right mindset for what was going to be happening, I was less bothered by the callbacks than I thought I was going to be. Because I walked out of it and I refused to form an opinion. Like, people were like, "You saw Alien? What did you think?" I was like, I'm not even gonna think about that." Like, I knew after seeing it the first time, I was like, I got to see this a second time. I saw it like on Saturday morning. Like, I had it was like literally 48 hours before I went and saw it again. And part of that is, yes, I love this franchise so much, but it was such a radically different kind of thing that I was expecting in terms of it. You're absolutely right. It tries to stitch together various components of the Alien universe in a way that I wasn't expecting. And so I didn't even try and like crystallize any thoughts about it. I just walked away and said, I'm going to go see it again and I'll see how I feel after it. In the movie's defense, there is already stuff that exists out there. My beloved Alien RPG, the tabletop role playing game, does all of that work. Like, they hired a guy who's a well known and well established science fiction writer and TTRPG writer in particular, and he did the damn thing. Like, he went through and said, with 20th Century's blessing, and said, these comic books, these novels, these movies are canon. This is how it all fits together. And he created, like, attempted to create a universe where the black goo and the xenomorphs, and like where aliens and Prometheus could exist in the same timeline, and did a pretty good job. So I'm a little predisposed to being like, I've already seen people try and do the math here and stitch together. What surprised me on rewatch is how not annoyed I was by that, because of a few key creative decisions. Now, there's some stuff we'll talk about in a second that really pissed me off and I never got over. But when it comes to the callbacks thing, there is a major difference for me between doing something like Alien Romulus and doing something like, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, where Star Wars: The Force Awakens is, we're going to have the familiar faces do the familiar things. So like Han Solo's gonna do like whatever Han Solo's gonna do. He's gonna have lines where he's cocky and arrogant and his callback and all that kind of stuff. Alien Romulus does something a little different, which is that there are no overt character tie-ins with whatever. There aren't any, no repeat characters. There's nobody coming back from the original film again, fucking whatever, that is meant to be the same character that was in the original movie. All of it is new, and there are new characters who are on paper completely divorced from the events of Alien, and they go through stuff that is a callback to Alien, a callback to Aliens, a callback to Resurrection, that kind of thing. But the movie does such a good job of making you give a shit about Rain and about Andy that a lot of this stuff is forgiven. Like, a lot of this stuff works because the Andy storyline, and this is where I get my most Alien contentious. I watch Aliens because of the androids, not the xenomorphs. Xenomorphs are cool, but they're sort of like the nothing in the never ending story. They're just sort of like there, and bad stuff happens when they're around. but I love my like weird fucking actors that get to play all in. I love, OG Ian Holm, Lance Henriksen. I love Michael Fassbender, both of those movies. Winona Ryder in Resurrection, I guess, too, a little bit. Like the android characters are the fun characters for me. That's where I think Ridley Scott's, sentiment and real interest lays. And a big chunk, I think before we started recording, I said most of this works for me most of the time. It's because of what they're doing with the character of Andy, his relationship with the character of Rain, and how the two of them unfold over the course of the movie. That's strong shit. That's real good shit. And it covers up, whether you love the movie or hate it, it propels the movie kind of past some of these things that it does that are frankly, yeah, let's talk about some of the stuff that really, really doesn't work. Because I think there are a few like critically bad creative decisions that even I can't excuse.
So I'm going to start off with piggybacking what you just said about Andy and Rain, because I agree with you. I'm doubling down on the fact that Andy and Rain is the strongest character work in this movie. And that is also because there isn't much other character work. And that's
Also true.
that's my first frustration. Um, David Johnson, I like, not to take anything away from Kaylee Spaney, who is doing great work here as the eventual obvious, like, we know where this is going. We know who she's trying to be at the end.
No, we already gave her flowers for Civil War. We don't need to give her
So
flowers for
so
this
that's
too.
what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was getting there. As much as Kaylee Spaney did a good job here, this is David Johnson's movie.
Yep.
This is 100% runaway amazing performance. If you haven't seen his prior work that's streaming on Hulu, please go do that. Rye Lane. But this portrayal of a synthetic and a portrayal of a let's, broken in a way, obviously, like, he is working functional, but he's not all there as a synthetic, and he's glitchy sometimes. And number one, what that represents in itself is so you've taken to humanizing a synthetic in a way that is endearing, that I wasn't expecting. Because underlying all this is the AI conversation of having to trust Andy and having Andy be a friend. But then all of a sudden his prime directive gets all frazzled and he has another prime directive. So can we really trust AI to help us? It'll always do its own thing. Great. But the performances between those two and the sustaining just domination by David Johnson on screen, and how he is playing Andy is immensely, just in every scene, no matter what it is, whether he is sympathizing, whether he is taking control, it's so robotic and mechanical. And however he figured out those mannerisms, I kind of liken it to Upgrade and Logan Marshall Green, the way he's able to play robotic in that. It's the same thing, and it's so good.
I gotta say, my favorite shot of the year, sorry to interrupt, but my favorite shot of the year is going to be the one where the code, like they insert the chip and the code overwrites and he looks straight up and his eyes turn white. And there's this whole fight scene or monster scene that happens with the face huggers. And David Johnson is just like frozen in space in the middle of this is unfolding. It's good shit. Alvarez knows how to shoot a good fucking horror action sequence.
Right. And it's good. And I will end the Johnson praise with saying that's what makes it so obvious that all these other characters are just plot devices. And I know, like, of course, like a character is a plot device, but at the same time, they're not developed past that. Like, you just have the guy who hates synthetics, and you have the pregnant woman, and the pilot, and the hunky crush. They don't matter beyond that. Like, I did not have a moment with any of those other characters where, let's say, some or most of them meet a grisly fate. It's an Alien movie. We can all assume that. We all know that. I did not give a shit when those fates were met. I did not have a moment where, there's no game over, man. There's no any of that where you can draw back on all these other Alien movies. And I'm not saying they're all ironclad in their casting, and I'm not saying we love every single character in this franchise, but there's always at least one or two others that we do love. And like, we care about them and we don't want to see them die. And we need those stakes. And I never felt that here. I never felt outside Rain and Andy to really be all that invested in these characters. And that was my first kind of, all right, this is fun because I'm getting my Alien Xenomorph shit, but I should give a shit about what's happening on screen. And it's all just like funhouse gore to me.
Yeah. And then there's Rook.
And then let's fucking do this.
Let's talk about Rook.
You can take this one and I'll jump in.
So here's the thing. I think this is partially a really good idea on paper. We establish in the movies and the books and the graphic novels and everything that Weyland Yutani creates lines of robots, which means there are thousands of Lance Henriksen's wandering around the alien universe. There's thousands of Ian Holmes. There's thousands of Michaels. The only film that really does that justice is Alien Covenant, where Michael meets Walter, and you have two different versions with two different levels of consistent programming, kind of going face off. It's the best part of that movie. Everything about that dual performance is the best part of that movie. It is a really, really good idea. It's a really good idea to play with the notion of what happens when an android who's had different experiences meets another android who's had different experiences. There's a part of me that wishes that they had just cast David Johnson as both characters. That's my preference. They should have just done it that way. But you can't bring back somebody who's dead. You can't bring back Ian Holm to play the character. And if you are going to bring back Ian Holm, I don't care if it's well, they did a lot of it through practical. It looks like shit. It looks so bad for the entire movie. And the problem is, you didn't need to make it that character. You could have hired any 50-year-old British actor with a punch. Anybody. Like, there is a world of character actors out there who could have played the android that they stumble across. And through context clues, aka the fact that when we meet them, they're split in half and leaking like lubricant, we would have been like, oh, this is must be a new android model we haven't met. There is absolutely no reason for them to choose the actor, the character, whatever that they did. I don't even know what to call a dead person's likeness. There's no reason for them to have approached it the way that they did. And I don't care if they got the family's permission. If they had pulled it off, maybe we could have had a different conversation. We could have said it was icky, but it worked. They can't pull it off. It doesn't look good. And it sinks. Like, Rook is not a small character. Rook is in a bunch of the fucking movie. And it makes me think how much better I would have felt about everything if that was if that was a real actor that played that role, or they brought back somebody from one of the other movies who wasn't fucking dead. It's a catastrophic decision. There's just no two ways about it.
And it was unnecessary, like you said. That's what kills me. What kills me is, sure, you stick with the lore that Weyland Yutani is making these replicants on a line and they
Sure.
all look the same. Great, but this is also a fucking sci-fi movie and you can do whatever you want. You literally you run the gamut of doing whatever the fuck you want with your movie. And sure, Fede Alvarez, let's not tell everyone you used AI to recreate this until your movie came out. That's probably the smart choice, but I'll never find a deep fake respectful. No matter what the situation. I'm either probably going to laugh at it because it's going to look bad, and unfortunately that is a case in Alien Romulus when they were trying to match the mouth up with the head and try to digital all that together. It was laughably bad. Some of the first scenes we see of Rook are inexcusably ugly. And that's even multiplied by having David Johnson to Andy standing right there talking to him. And you're like, holy shit, this kid is destroying his performance as Andy. And it's just putting a spotlight on how awful rubbish this is. And like you just said, he's a big character. He's the villain. Rook is essentially the villain of this movie. Yep. And we have to sit with that the whole time. And every time he comes back on screen, we have to reflect on what the fuck we're watching. So it's such a distracting, just poor decision that could have been brushed under the rug and redone. And hey, we tried it. It's a bad idea. We see it back now in post. Let's just do this right. Never once. And the way they barrel forward with it, again, just lost some faith in the whole hiding. We used AI to do this until you've seen the movie and paid the ticket kind of approach to it. Like, you can tell right there, they knew they didn't do it right. You can tell by the way they marketed it. And I couldn't get over that. I couldn't get over that.
I couldn't either.
It made it worse. It made it a worse movie when it didn't have to be.
The best that I can say about that is on round 2, I just sort of accepted it and like let it happen. But there was no, sometimes you watch movies. I've talked a lot because I changed my mind significantly on Furiosa. I changed my mind on Alien Romulus to a certain degree. This has been a year of me going and seeing franchise movies that I love and being like, ooh, I kind of missed the mark a little bit on the first watch. I'm doing better on the second watch. There isn't anything that works about Rook as a character, and it's offset David Johnson is a particularly egregious thing because Johnson's killing it. But the other portion of that too is that Alvarez has put, my God, endless craft and care into creating what feels like the most grounded science fiction film this side of like Prospect, right? Like it is a film that, like, They went back, they made the creative decision to recreate the technology of the world as it appears in the original Alien. And that was such a good fucking decision. And everything feels like tattered and lived in. And we're dealing with like floppy disks and DOS systems. And it doesn't feel like it's, a lot of these like retro 80s movies that you see that are like, remember 80s technology? And it's all just nostalgia and bullshit. This feels like a lived in world, especially when you start off on the planet and you get to kind of see the living conditions they're in. The production design on this movie is immaculate, doubly fucking so if you consider the fact that, as Alvarez has said, this ended up being a theatrical release, but it maintained its streaming budget. They didn't up the budget when they decided they were going to put it in theaters. So this was made with the intention of releasing on fucking Hulu, and Alvarez did this with something that they were paying Hulu prices for. It's gorgeous. It's a brilliant movie. Like the first shot where the spaceship is, booting up, and then you see it and it flows through the asteroid field, and you're like, oh, they're making everything around it look like Interstellar, but everything inside the ships look like Alien. Such a good balance. And then there's Rook, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? What is this monstrosity that exists at the corner of this movie that, like, everything else I just want to, like, I wanted a Halloween Horror Nights this shit, right? I want to go through, I want to sleep no more it and touch every, creative decision and every piece of scenery that they've built for this. And then they do that. It sucks.
And I'll swerve positive now, because I did say prior to our getting negative about Rook that I did like this movie overall. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a thin margin of staring at like a 3 out of 5 star review and saying, "Hey, I didn't like a bunch of stuff, but I also liked a bunch of stuff." And I'll start with the visuals, because outside of that abomination of Rook, it's fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous when it is outside, as you just said. You have the asteroid belt, but you also just have the immensity of space and the interplanetary stuff where it just looks crisp and clean, and it's pixelated, of course, it's animation, but at the same time, holy shit, it dazzles. And then you also have Alvarez's insistence to use practical as much as possible. And I feel like he's really become one of the masters of doing as much practical, but then doing that little post polish.
Mm-hmm.
And you get so much more out of the effects. And if you go back and watch some of his special features on the Evil Dead Blu-ray, and or if you read some of his interviews about Evil Dead, he talks about using, no joke, like magician's tricks and like optical illusions to pull off some insane gore stunts or whatever you're gonna,
Yeah.
however he's gonna use them. And I will say I was a little disappointed that I don't think Romulus ever pushes as far as Evil Dead. I don't think it ever matches the level of the squeamishness he
It was never
achieves.
going to.
It was
Yeah.
so that's the thing. It was
Yeah.
never going to, and that was part of it. But what we do still get, I was enamored by the practical we're using, and we're putting 7 foot plus tall dudes in costumes again and letting them run around and be the creeps, and we're getting people to play xenomorphs, and the costumes look sharp, and I was in on all that stuff. He honored everything about the Alien franchise that we love from behind the camera. He keeps Geiger's, I mean, like, it gets psychosexual with a lot of the visual imagery, and
Vaginas everywhere.
yeah,
It's great.
literally
It's so
every
nice to
single
see somebody be like, "Yep, let's do the weird Geiger vagina stuff again."
queen, mother, that is a recurring theme here, and he takes it to the billionth degree in a lot of this visual. So he's honoring everything that fans love about what they see on screen and doing that stuff. So I think he brought that a lot to life. And I like your comment about Halloween Horror Nights, because a lot of those scenes to me felt either just like a Halloween Horror Nights maze where you're walking through seeing all the bodies stuck in their cocoons and the dead face huggers, or video games. A
Mm.
lot of quick time events in this movie, whether that is the scene you mentioned already where it's the action sequence with the face hugger, and I can see having to hit buttons to like dodge the face hugger or pull it off. And also another face hugger scene, which is quite tense and quite thrilling, as we have Rain and Nameless Hunk running away from the face huggers. I can see that. What do
I'm
you,
trying to remember what his name was. Yeah,
it doesn't fucking matter. That's why. But
Tyler.
Tyler, that's
Tyler.
right.
There we go. I have the Wikipedia open. I'm cheating.
But it just felt to me like a quick time event, and like that's cool though. Like there was a lot of video game like linear mentality there. It was an open world. It's not this big
Yeah.
sprawling thing, but it felt like there were bosses and levels and challenges, and that works for someone like me. So I was drawn to that element of it. I was drawn to the fact that Alvarez wanted to have his fun where he could. I just feel like that got bogged down in the immensity of the nostalgia and the immensity of the patchwork. It does feel like patchwork where he's like, all right, I've got Prometheus and Coven over here, I got this over there. How do I make you kiss? What happens? How do I make this work?
Yeah. I think I ended up giving this a 3.5. I think it's the rare movie where, sometimes you give movies a score and you're like, I know that it was this, but I couldn't tell you. For this, it was a full star off for Rook, half a star off. For the Prometheus stuff at the end, which I like in a vacuum, but I don't know if it stitches together perfectly with the rest of the movie. If the movie ended with them in the pods, actually Andrea would have liked it more than me. She was more into the movie the first time we watched it together than that, which I think is just hilarious. But I do think, I mean, give this guy another Alien movie for sure. Like, I know because everybody was following along. Like, we've seen his reading list, the books and the comic books that he read. He made a lot of noise about playing Alien Isolation, which is a fucking fantastic game and really captures a lot of the space station vibes. Those, it's clear that that was definitely kind of like the feeling he wanted to evoke of being sort of helpless and wandering around a space station. We don't see any guns in this movie until like the final act, which Sigourney Weaver would approve of, and really does a nice job with building out like the helplessness of the humans. So like this guy gets the universe. He knows how to direct the shit out of it. I get that, like, to a certain extent, this was the problem that people had with Covenant too, right? Is that Ridley Scott was like, I made a fucking space Frankenstein whatever movie, and you wanted Alien. Fine, here's your fucking Alien, right? Covenant was a little bit of like, you want a fucking xenomorph? Here's a fucking xenomorph. What do you want from me? And I think that there's an element of that where they're just like, all right, we're gonna do it, but it has to have these things in there. And I don't want to say he was constricted or his hands were tied. I know you'll go the extra mile and say that. I'll just say that it went in with the intention of making some pieces fit together that I don't know that you had to make fit together. And I don't think the movie's better for it. But if we can reestablish that there's an audience for this and do another movie, in a couple of years, something maybe following these two characters, maybe not, I think that there is clearly a lot of juice left in this orange based on what Alvarez was able to accomplish, again, on a Hulu budget with a cast of nobodies.
Yeah, I won't say I know for fact that Fede Alvarez was handcuffed. I mean, I might be giving too much credit to the studio machine, and this could have been Fede and his co-writer Roto. Like that could have been their idea. It could have
Yeah.
all been there. I don't want to say that he was the dog getting bashed on the nose. It could have been him, but I would love to see him get another Alien movie in the same way we talk about one for me, one for the studio. Just like you said, I gave you Prometheus. That's mine for Ridley, and now Ridley's like, I'll give you one. I think that Alien Romulus is Fede saying, this is mine for the studio. And if he is given another movie, I want his Alien
Yeah.
movie. I want him full creative, go full bore. The Alien Isolation stuff, I actually wanted him just to kind of adapt that. That was really what I wanted to see from him because he showed how he could take Evil Dead, a comical franchise, let's say, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, that swerves the way of a lot more slapstick, and that makes sense because Raimi always wanted to make his horror Three Stooges in a way.
Hell yeah.
But what Alvarez did for that franchise and made it fucking terrifying, just full bore in, I'm going to get back into making Evil Dead scary and scarier than it's ever been. I wanted that for Alien. That's really what I wanted him to bring to the Alien franchise. And if he gets one more shot, that's what I want to see from him. So I'm here for what he did. I'm here for what he accomplished. My negatives, like you said, if I looked at a score and said, all right, he gave it 3 out of 5. So what are its dings? For me, it's supporting cast. For me, it's the overbearing nostalgia. For me, it kind of is that third act. That third act lost me. If it ended where Andrea, like I think I'm team Andrea there. Like
Yeah, I am too.
that's if it ended there and just left it open. Ooh, yeah, love that. Where we go with the motherhood metaphor and what is birthed and the creature that becomes that, it just didn't do as much for me. It wasn't the final epic battle like we've had before in Alien movies. So that's a ding there. And Rook is an easy one. That's my 2 stars gone right there. Half a star for each of those. And I just I am whelmed, but I am still underwhelmed, and it's such a dumb way to say it. But I have one comment question. We might go a minute or two over here because I do have a question.
Yeah, hit me.
Could be book, could be comic. But I went to the Dodgers game on Monday,
I
and
remember.
I am walking towards my seats with Amelia. I have an open beatbox. I'm just having my little sippy drinks. I'm just, having a good time. A security guard looks at me and he just starts walking towards me. And I forget I have my alien shirt on from Rucking Fun. Like, it's a great shirt. And he just stops me and he's like, yo, you see Romulus? And I'm like, wait, what? And this dude talked to us for like 4 solid minutes because he's like, yo, I know the whole Rook thing, but like, there's the character named Rook in the canon, and he's the one. I know exactly, Rogers, and he's the
Rook.
one that
Rook.
takes, like, I forget how he explained it, but he takes this species back to Earth, and he's the one that basically makes Earth xenomorphic in some kind of canon spin-off. So I want that fucking movie. I want that shit to go to Earth. I want there to be wilderness xenomorphs like just roaming around taking over deer and bear and shit. I
If you like that, I don't think they're particularly great, but part of that is just like the standard of what you needed to do, the quality of what you needed to do to get published as an aliens thing in the 80s and 90s was a little different. But there is the Earth War series, which is basically just that. Xenomorphs take over Earth, humanity flees, and then humanity goes to take it back. It's not canon. It got kicked out of canon by, I think, um, gosh, I think Alien 3 killed the canon on that because I think that it was still in a universe where Newt survived and where Hicks survived. But yeah, there's a whole narrative story arc where we wage war on the xenomorphs to reclaim our home, and then there was a reboot the Dark Horse did in the like one of the last things before they lost the Alien license in like the mid 2010s, where they picked up what life was like on Earth after they were rebuilding in the aftermath of the Xenomorph Wars. So it was very Dark Horse canon. It's no longer like established canon, but that's the thing is that if you poke around any corner of the Alien universe, like there's an Alien comic book that I have on my shelf that I haven't read yet, which is it takes place in medieval times and they're fighting like knights and stuff. I think that's a book that I haven't read yet. There's like there's a million variations of this shit and it's all really really fun. And the last thing in the world that you really need to do is try and make it all fit together because it's just fun shit. And kind of works for me in the movie, kind of doesn't, but the stuff that have more fun with is where it just gets fucking weird with it. And I will say that I was inspired by Alien Romulus to go retry Alien Isolation for like the fourth time because that game gets like it is too anxiety inducing for me. I have never been able to make it through a playthrough of Alien Isolation, and now I'm gonna like grit my teeth, like put a wooden spoon between my teeth and just play the damn thing.
Yeah, that is the ultimate alien horror experience, I think, still out there. So if you have
Can you
not
imagine
played,
playing it in fucking VR? People do that. I can't
no,
imagine it.
absolutely not. No,
No,
there's no shot.
no, million years no. All right, well, that's us talking about Alien Romulus. I generally liked it. I don't know if that came across or not. When you love something, you're more critical of it, I think, than you would be otherwise. But I 99% agree with Donato too. It's a mixed bag, but I guarantee you, there's going to be at least 20 minutes of that movie that you think is cool as shit. So that's a recommend from me. We need more. We need more sci-fi horror, anyways. More big budget sci-fi horror. So let's do it and let's teach 20th Century Fox maybe the wrong lesson. And they're like, oh yeah, let's do a bunch of space horror stuff. Done. Perfect. Love it.
Event Horizon 2.
Yeah, or just go find that missing footage. Whatever. I don't care. Donato, how do folks follow you online? Where do they go to find more insights into the Houston Astros fucking great fucking playoff run? Fucking
Yeah,
amazing for you.
sorry, RIP Scott Service.
Fuck him.
Your service was not required anymore for the Mariners.
That's all right. We have Dan Wilson as our manager now, who's never managed at any level of professional baseball. We're doing great.
Hey, we got a Spada, man. It can work. It can work. In any case, where can you find me? At Donatobomb on Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. That is DONATOBOMB. And that is where I will post all of my work. Like I reviewed 6 movies this week. They're all just scattered on random websites, but I tweet them all out. I post them. So as long as you're following me, you will hear my thoughts on things like Blink Twice, Gunner, and other dog shit movies that I have to review.
Yeah, you kind of sort of didn't like any of them.
Blink Twice I just posted today. I did like that. I liked
Okay,
that a good deal enough where I would actually ask you to maybe watch it and in the future have a convo about it.
great. All right, tune in 2 weeks when we talk about Blink Twice as our Uncertified movie. That's actually happening. There's a pretty good sneak peek of what's going to happen.
Awesome. There we go.
As for myself, you can follow me on the social medias, basically just Blue Sky. It's Monagle at the Blue Sky stuff. And make sure that visit certifiedforgotten.com, check out some of the cool articles. We started posting reviews that Donato and I are writing. We're trying to move and shake a little bit. We're going to be attending Fantastic Fest, and we might be publishing a few things for Certified Forgotten during Fantastic Fest. That'll be kind of cool. And of course, you can sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/certified forgotten. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter, or if you like what you hear, sign up for something more. We've got a few tiers there. Pay what you can. We think you'll like it. But on that note, in space, everyone can hear you groan at the decision to bring back Ian Holm.
Fuck it.